Imagine London. The morning of May 19th, 1536. Fog hangs over the Thames, and the air smells of smoke from torches and wet stone floors. The tower is silent. Even the crows, which usually caw above the walls, are sitting quietly today. A crowd gathers in the courtyard, not angry, not noisy, but one that has come to see a miracle. Because today they are not executing a criminal. Today they are executing a queen. A woman emerges from the tower. She is wearing a dark red dress and stands tall and proud. Her face is pale, but her eyes are calm. She walks slowly, as if she is not going to her execution, but to her own coronation. The wind touches her hair, and for a moment it seems as if she is smiling. "I only ask that it be quick," she says. Her voice is steady, almost gentle. Everyone hears her, and it is the silence after her words that is the most terrifying part of the spectacle. This is not just an execution. This is the day when love became treason, when the woman who became a symbol of the break with Rome was destroyed by that same power, when the crown turned out to be not an ornament, but shackles slowly tightening around her neck. They say that at the moment when the sword of the French executioner from Calais flashed in the sunlight, one woman in the crowd whispered, "Poor Anne. She lost everything, except her dignity." And if you look closely at the stone on which she fell, it seems to still remember the sound of that blow. Not just metal against flesh, but the end of a love that cost an empire. It all began far from the throne. And Boleyn was not born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Her father, Thomas Boleyn, was a clever diplomat, not a hereditary nobleman. Her mother was Lady Elizabeth Howard, of noble birth but without close ties to royal blood, and was not born for the crown, but for the game, and she learned to play brilliantly. As a girl, she was sent to the French court, where manners were refined and intrigues were deadly. There she realized that a smile could be a weapon and a word a trap. In letters, her contemporaries wrote, "She is not like English girls, too clever, too lively, too sharp." In France, and saw everything. The sophistication of the Renaissance, the freedom of women under Queen Claude, and the glamour and cynicism of King Francis I's mistresses. It was there that she realized that power could be in the hands of a woman, if she knew how to speak when others were silent. When, in return to England, there were already whispers at court about her older sister Mary, the former mistress of Henry VIII. But it was, and who made the king forget everyone else. Not because of her beauty, although she had dark hair, black eyes, and that mysterious charm that her contemporaries called French allure. Her strength lay elsewhere, in her ability to say no. When Henry began to court her, and did not become his mistress, she refused gifts, letters, and the affection that others begged for. She said, "I will not be anyone's comfort. If the king wants me, let him make me queen." For a woman of the 16th century, this was not just audacity, it was suicide. But Henry had never met anyone who refused to submit to him before, and this inflamed him more than any passion. They say that was when he began to lose his peace of mind. He wrote in dozens of letters filled with religious fervor and obsession. In one of them, there was a real cry from a ruler who was not used to hearing refusals. "My heart belongs to you, and only death can take it away." Anna responded coldly, with intelligent caution. She knew that whoever stood next to the king also stood on the edge of a precipice. She was not innocent in this game. She played exquisitely, dangerously, and each time closer to the fire. At a time when a woman was supposed to remain silent, Anna dared to speak, and she was heard too loudly. When she looked at Henry, she saw not only a man, she saw an opportunity to change history. And he saw in her not just a woman, but a justification for his obsession. Thus began a love that would destroy the church, the kingdom, and ultimately both of them. Imagine a king who is everything, power, an army, gold, but lacks the one thing he desires most, a woman who said no to him. Henry VIII becomes obsessed. His first marriage to Catherine of Aragon lasted almost 20 years. She was dignified and pious, but no longer young, and she did not bear him a son, an heir who would ensure his place in history. And Boleyn appeared in his life like a bolt of lightning in a stuffy court. And this lightning was to burn entire empires. The king did not just want her, he wanted to make her his lawful wife. But to do so, he had to annul a marriage blessed by the Pope himself. But the Pope refused. Because Catherine was the aunt of Emperor Charles V, the most powerful man in Europe. And you don't mess with emperors. So one man's personal desire became the cause of the greatest religious revolution in British history. Henry declared himself head of the Church of England. He broke with Rome, broke with centuries-old traditions, and called it God's will. But everyone knew that behind this will was a woman with dark eyes who knew how to smile, as if she were challenging the heavens themselves. And Boleyn became a symbol of a new world. She was hated, feared, and whispered about as a witch who had bewitched the king. She was adored by those who saw in her the courage of a woman who did not submit to any man, not even the Pope. They say that when Henry received his first excommunication, he just laughed. "Now I am my own Pope," he said, and, according to legend, tore up the bull with his own hands. Meanwhile, dark legends spread throughout London. Priests said that all the candles burst on the spot where and passed on her way to the chapel, as if the air itself refused to light her way. Chronicles wrote, "She brought with her splendor and disaster, and since then, neither has left England." Their love became a political act. Each of her kisses was a declaration of independence, each of his orders a challenge to God. The people whispered, "He broke with Rome for her sake, but he will break with her for his own sake." And in this prophecy lies their entire tragedy. For power born of love always turns against the one who created it. The year is 1533. Foggy London is preparing for a spectacle it has never seen before. King Henry VIII leads to the altar the woman for whom he broke the empire. And Boleyn is not just a bride, but a symbol of a new world, a new faith, a new England. But this triumph was strange. As her carriage passed through the streets, people did not throw petals, they were silent. Some even turned away, others crossed themselves. She was riding to the crown, but every step echoed, "This is a crown of thorns." At the ceremony, and shone, gold, jewels, a dress as light as a breath. But behind the glamour lay tension. She was pregnant, and everything, her fate, her life, her future, depended on who would be born. The king was waiting for a son. So was the kingdom. It seemed that even God had to decide whether she was worthy of her place. September. Instead of the long-awaited boy, a girl was born, Elizabeth. Chronicles wrote that when the king heard the news, his face turned gray. He said nothing, just quietly left the room. According to some accounts, he did not even look at the child. Others claimed that he embraced, and, trying not to show his disappointment, but the former fire was no longer in his eyes. For England, it was a moment of rupture. And it was the beginning of loneliness. Now the court looked at her with distrust. Her former allies were silent. Henry's love cooled like spilled wine on a stone floor. He spent more time with his hunting dogs and less with her. And every day she saw the courtiers' glances grow colder. They say she wore black dresses even during the day, although no one had declared mourning. She knew that her place under the sun was cracking at the seams, and was not made for silence. She argued with Henry, advised him on matters of state, and even dared to criticize him. "My queen wants to be an advisor," Henry said bitterly one day. She replied, "My love is not silent." It was not just a conversation between spouses, it was a warning sign of danger. It is said that at night, when everyone was asleep, and walked barefoot through her chambers, whispering prayers and staring into the darkness. Sometimes she would touch her belly, where a child's heartbeat once beat, and say, "I may not have given birth to a son, but I have given the world a queen." And this turned out to be true, which would only be understood decades later. For now, her throne stands on sand, and the tide is already rising. Spring 1536. Henry VIII Palace is no longer a center of celebration, but a beehive where every whisper can cost a life. And Boleyn still wears the crown, but a shadow already sits in her hall. January 1536, and loses her baby boy. From this moment on, her favor with the king drops sharply. Thomas Cromwell, the advisor who once helped the king win her, now sees her as a threat. He senses that the tide is turning. The king is tired, the people are dissatisfied, and someone must be sacrificed so that the empire can breathe again. "I will destroy her," he said, "even if I have to destroy half of England." So wrote one of the chroniclers. And it seems he did not exaggerate. From that moment on, everything began to move with eerie precision. The charges: treason, adultery, witchcraft, Three words that in the 16th century meant only one thing: death. It is said that in the corridors of Whitehall, people whispered, and is preparing poison, that she laughs during Mass, that she wears a snake-shaped pendant, supposedly a sign of Satan, that she sleeps not only with courtiers, but also with her own brother, George Boleyn. No one asked for proof. Signatures were quickly collected. Cromwell gathered evidence, and everyone who wanted to survive suddenly remembered some details. 5 men, a musician, a poet, a servant, and, most frighteningly, her own brother, were arrested almost simultaneously. They say that when Anne found out who had been imprisoned, she only whispered, "God, you see that I am alone." The palace was silent, deeper than death. No one dared to say her name. Only Cromwell's pen scratched at night, writing lines of accusations that had already been sentenced before the trial. The people whispered that a curse had been cast on her, that during a banquet, a black fly crawled out of Anne's cup, and everyone understood it was a sign. Others said that the king, looking at his new favorite, Jane Seymour, uttered only one thing: "Will God grant me peace again?" After that, words became weapons, and silence became a sentence. And when Anne was summoned for questioning, she already knew. Everything she said would be music to strangers' ears. Her story, once a love story, had now become a story of a state crime. And the state is always interested in only one thing: convenient truth. "No voices can be heard in the palace," wrote an eyewitness. "Only the rustling of documents and the pen scribbling her name at the bottom of the list." May 6, 1536. The Tower Gate opens, and the carriage stops near the old courtyard. And steps out alone, unaccompanied, without a crown, wearing only a dark dress. The wind lifts her veil, and for a moment everyone sees her face, calm, strangely calm. The commandant bows. "Your Majesty." She smiles faintly. "You don't need to call me that anymore." She is led to the chambers where nobles were usually held before execution. Iron bars, a narrow window, fresh air from the Thames. But she does not cry. She looks through the wall, as if she sees not stone, but a path, long but straight. It is said that she did not sleep on the first night. She prayed aloud until morning, repeating only one thing: "Let time judge me, not man." In the morning, when the priest came to her, she looked strangely bright. "Are you afraid, Lady Anne?" "Only of one thing," she replied: "that I will not have time to forgive." And she did indeed ask for forgiveness, not only from God, but also from Henry. "Tell him," she said, "that I wish him no harm. I only pray that his heart may find peace." It was not submission. It was a challenge. Because forgiving someone who has betrayed you means remaining superior to them. One of the guards later said that he heard her laughing at night. "She's going mad," said the others. Or maybe it was just the nervous laughter of a person on the brink. Witnesses swore that she did not close her eyes until dawn. She just sat there, holding the crucifix, and whispered names. "Elizabeth," "God, forgive me." When letters were brought to her, she took each one without opening it. She knew that all words were now empty. Her last letter was a short line to the king: "I do not fear your will, for I know it comes from man, not from God." Tower heard a lot: screams, moans, curses. But that May, he heard something else, a prayer that sounded like a song. And in every stone remained her breath, not of fear, but of clarity. For Anne already knew, not everyone leaves this place, but those who do become legends. On May 17, 1536, 2 days before Anne's execution, 5 people accused of relations with her were executed, including her brother George Boleyn. May 19, 1536. The world blossoms on a clear May morning, as if unaware that today it will be stained with blood. A crowd gathers in the courtyard of the Tower: lords, ladies, commoners who have come to see the end of a love that once cost a crown. And emerges in a dark red dress. Her face is uncovered, her hair covered with a cap. She walks slowly, without stumbling or trembling. It seems that she is leading the procession, not being led. On the scaffold, she is met by a French executioner, specially invited from Calais. A sword, not an axe. Henry granted her the mercy of a quick death. Execution by sword in England was a rare mercy for nobles. Even in death, she remained an exception. She thanks him, even now. She bows her head and says quietly, "Take care of the king, for he was good to me." and everything that happened was God's will. The crowd holds its breath. Some cry, some stare without blinking. They say even the birds fell silent for a moment. And kneels. The maid blindfolds her, but she bows her head herself, calmly, like a person ready to pray. The executioner whispers to his assistants not to warn her when the blow is about to fall. She stands upright, her hands folded, her lips whispering, "Jesus Christ, receive my soul." A moment. A whistle. The sword flashed like a piece of the sun, and it was over. One blow. Not a single scream. The silence is so deep that you can hear a hair fall on the floorboards. Chronicles wrote that after the blow, her lips still moved, as if repeating the prayer. Others swore they saw her smile before she died. There are even those who claim that her eyes remained open for a few seconds and looked up, as if it's something we cannot see. The maids gathered her body. There was no coffin, only an old wooden box for arrows. They placed the former Queen of England in it, and the people were silent, not out of fear, out of horror at how quickly power turns the heart into cold stone. That same evening, wine was uncorked at Whitehall. Henry VIII celebrated his engagement to Jane Seymour. On May 30th, 1536, Henry VIII married Jane Seymour, exactly 11 days after Anne's execution. And if prayers were still being heard somewhere within the walls of the Tower, they were drowned out by the laughter of the new banquet. It is said that when dusk fell on London, only blood and a rose remained on the scaffold. The wind picked it up and laid it on the stone, as if God himself wanted to leave a sign. Silence fell again, a silence that remembers everything. That same evening, when the French executioner's sword still smelled of iron and blood, the king was already smiling at another woman. May 19th, 1536, the day of Anne Boleyn's execution, also became the day of his engagement to Jane Seymour. Such haste cannot be explained by love. It was a ritual of purification, to erase the past before it had time to leave a scar. But history does not forget even what the authorities want to destroy. Anne's body was placed in a rough wooden box for arrows. There was no time to make a coffin. Several of her maids, weeping, carried the body to the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, on the grounds of the Tower. No mourning ceremonies, no candles, no coat of arms. Just the body and silence. Thus ended the life of the woman for whom the king had challenged Rome itself. But the people did not remain silent. Legends spread through the streets. It is said that at night, when the Tower gates are closed, a red figure walks along the wall, holding her head in her hands. And every time one of the monarchs makes a fatal mistake, the quiet footsteps of a woman can be heard in the Tower. She left quietly, but her footsteps can still be heard in the stone, wrote one monk. Meanwhile, little Elizabeth, Anne's daughter, was left without a mother and without a title. She was declared illegitimate. For many, she was the witch's daughter. Her tutors changed, her mother's letters were forbidden to be mentioned, and the name, Anne Boleyn, was not spoken aloud. But time loves irony. For it was this child, deprived of her inheritance, who would become the greatest ruler in English history. It is said that before her execution, Anne looked up at the sky and whispered, "Lord, bless my daughter. May she be greater than I." And the prophecy came true. 22 years later, the girl born by mistake would sit on the throne as Elizabeth I and create an empire that her mother could only dream of, and lost her crown so that her daughter could inherit it. She lost her life so that she could remain immortal. And in this lies the harsh harmony of history. One head fell so that another could rise above all others. Half a century passed. The crown that once took Anne Boleyn's head now rests on her daughters. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, mother of the Empire, son of England. Her reign was a golden age. Sailors discovered new lands. Poets wrote poems for her, and the people sang her name. But even gold casts a shadow. For another woman appears in her life. Also a queen, also strong, also doomed. Mary Stuart, Queen of Scotland. Her blood is Catholic. Her faith is dangerous to the English throne. For the Catholics of Europe, she is the true heir, the rightful Queen of England. For Elizabeth, she is a reminder of a past that refuses to die. Two queens, two faiths, two shadows, both heirs to old sins. Mary is like a reflection of Elizabeth's mother, beautiful, charismatic, rebellious, but too trusting. Her husbands betray her, her allies flee, and in the end she seeks refuge in England, in her own trap. Elizabeth hesitates for a long time. She does not want to become a punisher. She remembers her mother was also executed for the sake of the state. And perhaps, somewhere deep in her soul, she hears the echo of that same sword falling in the tower. But the state does not hesitate. Councils, spies, conspiracies, letters, and finally, a signature. Elizabeth signs her name to Mary's death warrant. 1587, Fotheringhay Castle. The dawn is cold as stone. Mary comes out in a dark red dress, the color of martyrdom. She prays, forgives everyone, and lays her head on the block. The executioner is clumsy. The first blow is inaccurate. The second one too. Only the third one finally cuts off her head. And then something happens that even for those cruel times seems too human and terrible at the same time. When the executioner lifts Mary's head, a small dog runs out from under her dress, having been hiding near her body all this time. He does not leave her even when everything is over. It is said that when Elizabeth was brought the news of the execution, she fainted. And she repeated one thing over and over again. I didn't want this. History has come full circle. The daughter of the executed woman signed the sentence of another queen. Her mother's sword returned in the echo of 3 blows of the axe. And perhaps it was then, when silence fell on Fotheringhay, that another shadow echoed in the cold walls of the tower for a moment, red, calm, with a smile. Fog descends on the tower again. Half a century has passed, but the stones remember. The same courtyard, the same cold wind that once touched Anne Boleyn's hair. And they say that on days when thick darkness hangs over the Thames, you can hear quiet footsteps on the stone. During the reign of Elizabeth I, references to Anne Boleyn were carefully regulated at court. Her memory was preserved, but without official glorification. Legends say that sometimes guards see a figure in dark red walking through the courtyard, holding her head in her hands. And when she disappears near St. Peter's Chapel, a whisper can be heard in the air. Protect the king. Whether it is a ghost or just the voice of history, no one knows. But every monarch of England, ascending the throne, passes by her grave. And no one dares to say her name aloud. Because Anne Boleyn is not just a woman. She is a reminder that love can be sharper than a sword. That power always sacrifices those it once adored. And that history has a strange habit of repaying its debts. Elizabeth I died without children. Her empire remained, but her dynasty did not. England gained greatness, but lost its succession. And as her body was carried to Westminster, one of the courtiers whispered, "She is going to her mother." 2 figures, 2 shadows, 2 destinies. A mother who lost her head so that her daughter could gain the crown. A daughter who lost her right to love in order to retain power. Sword and axe, love and fear, mother and daughter. Everything repeats itself, only the places change. History, like the tower, never sleeps. They say Anne Boleyn's eyes never closed. To see what her child would do. To watch as blood and the crown continued their dance, where love always ends in silence. Anne Boleyn lost her head, but kept her memory. Elizabeth lost her mother, but gained an empire. And both were left without the right to love.